Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, April 11th, 2013. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. This week, an experiment from homebrewer Kevin Ellis about perceived bitterness, comparing a beer that a bitterness calculator says has 0 IBUs against a more traditionally hopped beer. If you're new to home brewing and would like to get into the hobby for the first time, check out our website, basicbrewing.com, where you can find archives of our audio and video podcasts and our DVDs to walk you through basic and more advanced brewing techniques. You can find me on Twitter at Basic Brewing, all one word. Also, you can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/basicbrewing.james. We have a show page on Facebook at facebook.com/basicbrewing. Thanks again to everybody clicking on the Amazon.com associate link on our basicbrewing.com site. You know how that works. Whenever you get the itch to shop for something on Amazon, don't go to Amazon first, go to our website first. Click on the banner there, the Amazon banner. That will take you to Amazon, and then you can shop as you usually do, and we'll get a commission on whatever you buy, and it won't cost you any extra, and that's the great thing. And we greatly appreciate your taking that little bit of extra effort to support the show. We also have associate links for Brew Your Own magazine and the American Homebrewers Association on our site, too. You can find our Basic Brewing iPhone app on iTunes and our Android app on Amazon.com. We are in the BlackBerry podcast directory. We're in the Stitcher app. And I've been told we're on the Windows phone directory, too. Check out our brewer's logbook at basicbrewingshop.com. On the front is a calendar that you can use to track your fermentations and plan your brews. And the good thing about the calendar is that it is blank. So you have a full year of calendar pages, no matter when you start your brewing year. And there's room in the back to log the details of up to 50 batches of brew. If you want to put a tip in our tip jar, some coinage in our guitar case, as it were, you can go to basicbrewing.com/support. And thanks to everybody who has done so already. Up here, up in the northern hemisphere, up north of the equator, warmer temperatures and more sunshine are on the way. Protect your precious beer with one of our growler bags. The bag is essentially a cylindrical cooler that is just the right size to accommodate a 64-ounce growler or a couple of 22-ounce bombers or 3 12-ounce bottles. And it has an adjustable strap so you can sling it over your shoulder. Check those out at basicbrewingshop.com. Wow, did we ever get a lot of feedback on the latest episode with the debate from the Alabama House of Representatives on the homebrewing legislation? Boy, listeners were amazed at the amount of opposition, the large amount of opposition, and the little amount of knowledge that seemed to be backing up that opposition. You can see a sample of that feedback on our Facebook page, and all I can say is, welcome to the South. I've lived in Arkansas all my life, and I covered politics as a professional journalist for a bit of that time. And listening to that debate, it took me back. That's all I can say. And right now, the legislation in Alabama seems to be stuck, at least for a bit, at the Senate committee level. But we're all pulling for you guys down there in Alabama, and we're hoping for a positive outcome. And we hope that the legislation or the legislators don't go home and leave you stranded as the last state in the union that doesn't have legal homebrewing. Several of you have been asking about the plastic keg that Sean Halstead of Mr. Beer was talking about a couple of weeks ago. And I've been forwarding emails to Sean. And here's part of a reply from the most recent one. Sean says, in addition to the Mr. Beer line of kits and refills, we manufacture a line of 5 to 6 gallon equipment and supplies with the name of our parent company, Cooper's. When this product becomes available, talking about the keg, it will most likely be branded as a Cooper's item or something else. Kevin says, Sean says, in the podcast, Sean said in the podcast, this item is like a big bottle that you can hook up to a kegerator. It is safety rated at 60 psi, twice the amount that you need to force carbonate, and 10 times the amount you need to serve, and includes a protective jacket that surrounds the bottle. These are very easy to use, clean, and store. Kevin says Sean, doggone it. I'm looking forward to the conversation with Kevin. Sean says these kegs are manufactured for us as a homebrewing item by a company in Atlanta. They also manufacture a product called the Pub Keg, which is sold only to breweries. I do not know very much about the Pub Keg, but there are some differences between the product and ours that can be seen in photographs of both products. As of right now, this item we sell is available in limited quantities, not qualities, in retail locations only. So apparently they're still rolling out those the plastic kegs. So stay tuned, I guess, or check with the Cooper's website or the Mr. Beer website and see how that's coming along. John from Jericho, Vermont asks, I'm beginning to design a hop trellis for my backyard, but I'm concerned on the weight that will be on a line. Do you have a rough estimate on how much weight one 12-foot line should expect to hold? Well, that's a good question. And like I do with a lot of good questions, I forwarded to an expert. I forwarded John's question to Dan Detmers of Gorst Valley Hops, who you've heard on the show. And Dan said the most vigorous variety I've seen have run 30 to 45 pounds per plant. How much tensile strength do you need, though? Obviously, it has to hold the dead weight of the plants. Add to that any inertia that may gain if there's a strong wind and they start blowing back and forth, or the force of a gale force wind blowing them like a giant sail. And then there are the kids. Don't hang your kids on the no, never mind. We use 3/8-inch braided steel cable for a 100-foot run. And that's when he's talking about running a cable along the top that the lines hang from, I'm assuming. Dan says, when we hit a bad storm, the cable held just fine. Unfortunately, the poles didn't. For a couple of plants, you don't need to go to that level. If you are spanning 12 feet, 4 plants, plan on 250 pounds and you should be fine. If not, you can have the fun adventure of tying them back up. You could probably use a strong rope, but be sure to leave yourself a way to tighten it up when the ropes start to stretch. Good point. Even our cable has a tendency to stretch, and we spend the season retightening the field. Avoid 12-gauge electric fence wire or similar. While it can take the weight, any kink will cause it to snap fairly easily. Well, thanks to Dan for answering that question. Here in Arkansas, with my small hop yard, I've done a couple of video podcasts on hop trellis situations, and on the current one, I have a metal pole that goes across the top at the 12-foot level, and then hanging from that, on one I've got some twine, some rope that I got at the hardware store, and the other one I borrowed some plastic baling twine from a friend of ours who is he grows hay. And the plastic baling twine has lasted several seasons, and the hops like it. They climb up it, and it seems to be strong enough to hold everything. And it's not rotting. That's the good thing. But by the way, my Cascade hops are already a foot high, and I posted a picture of those on our Facebook page the other day. And it looks like my Goldings and Fuggles are not showing up this year at all, and my Hallertauer and Satz are looks like they're going to make one more run at it. Although they faded pretty quickly in the hot and dry conditions last year, and they didn't produce anything. So I'm not looking forward to anything from them. So the English gave up the ghost. The Germans are hanging in there, but not doing so well. And the American hops, the Cascades, they're doing good. Okay. A few weeks ago, Kevin Ellis sent me an email describing an experiment that he did comparing 2 beers, one of which he said had 0 calculated IBUs. And that got my attention. And so I enlisted the help of Brad Sturgeon of Monmouth College to get some lab data into the discussion. Well, Kevin Ellis, welcome to Basic Brewing Radio.
Thanks, James. Thanks for having me.
You did what you called a perceived bitterness experiment. What was your goal, or what was your purpose?
The purpose was, I heard you and St. Hieronymus talk maybe a month or two ago about adding hops at different times in your beer and what they contribute to your beer. And I thought, this would be kind of neat to do 2 beers, same grain bill, same original gravity, but one beer has actual IBUs and one beer has none. One beer I had just for hop additions at the mash, the flame out, and dry hop. And the other beer had just additions right at the boil. And I wanted to see, when I gave these finished beers out, how would we perceive bitterness? Like, would those hops come through and tell our brain, hey, I can taste hops. Are there actual IBUs here, or no? Is it just like a very unbalanced sweet tea? So I made those two beers, and I blended them together to get 3 total beers.
Now, before we get too far into the details, I forgot to ask you kind of your brewing background. I like to hear a bit about, the homebrewers, where they've come from and what they're doing. So give us a little bit of background on your brewing experience.
Sure. 3 years ago, my wife, Lindsay, got me a Mr. Beer kit for Father's Day. And I won't knock anything against Mr. Beer. I know one of your listeners didn't appreciate that very much in one of your last shows. But Mr. Beer was great for me. It was like a gateway drug, and most home brewers that are all grain now, well, not most, but some know what I'm talking about. But I did that for about 6 months to a year, got sort of bored with it, wanted to get better beers, wanted to make better beers. So my friend Derek from work said, hey, why don't you try extract brewing? And he came over for the first couple of beers, and it was great. It was fun. It wasn't too much harder, but you just boiled longer, and you actually got to add hops. So I did extract for about a year, and then I did partial mashes just on the stovetop for about 3-4 months. Made 5 or 6 batches. Said, this is not too hard, not as bad as I thought. Terminology was coming around, and I thought, well, I might as well just go to all graining, save some money, or all graining and save some money. And that's what I did. I turned my cooler into a mash tun, and I've been all graining for a little over a year.
So you've seen it all. You've been around the block.
Yeah, from Mr. Beer to all grain. It's been fun.
Well, that's cool.
I feel like it's a good transition one into the next.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you did.
You learn a little bit each step.
You did all the steps. I mean, you went from Mr. Beer to extract to partial mash and then to all grain. So I guess the next step would be professional brewing. Do you have any aspirations?
I do. It's a ways down the road. I have a young family, so I don't want to put that in jeopardy. But I have been looking into it, thinking about it. I'm sure like most home brewers do. Enter a lot of competitions, get good feedback, and if it wasn't so hard to start and you need all that capital, I think I would. But like I said, I don't want to put the family in jeopardy.
There you go. So back to your experiment. Spoiler alert, we sent off some samples to Brad Sturgeon in the lab to do some analyticals. So, we'll have that after you talk about your experiment and your results. But when you say that you wanted to brew a beer with no IBUs, what do you mean? Well,
no IBUs brewing science related. If you add it, they say if you add hops in the mash, none of that crosses over. Flame out, you're not going to get any, and dry hop, you won't get any. Or I think that's how I interpret it from Stan Hieronymus in your interview with him. So I thought, I wonder, even if IBUs aren't in the beer, would we perceive bitterness?
So these are small batches, first of all, right?
Yeah. 1 gallon batches is a piece of cake, and it was really fun.
And you used the same fermentable recipe in both. You want to talk about that?
Same grain bill. It was 1.5 pounds of Maris Otter, ounce of light Munich, an ounce of C40, and an ounce of white wheat.
So for those who are metrically inclined, I didn't forget about you this time. That's 680 grams of Maris Otter, 28 grams of the C40, 28 grams of the white wheat, and 28 grams of the light Munich. So on beer A, we're calling beer A, what did you do about hops?
Beer A. It was just Cascade all the way through. It was a half ounce of Cascade during the mash, a quarter ounce of Cascade at flame out, and a quarter ounce of Cascade dry hop for 7 days.
So I'll translate again. That's 14 grams, 14 grams of Cascade in the mash. So you just added that with the grains in the mash.
Yep.
7 grams of Cascade at flame out. And how long was it? I imagine these are small batches, so I guess it didn't take you very long to to go from boiling to pitching temperature.
Boiling from pitching temperature.
So in other words, the cool down after you added your flame out hops.
Yes. Yeah. No. Well, I would say I didn't use an immersion chiller. I just ice bathed them, and that took about 20 minutes.
Okay. So that's those 7 grams of Cascades were in there from the end of the boil to your pitching temperature in about 20 minutes, and then you dry hopped after fermentation with
fermentation.
7 grams of Cascade again.
Yeah, I didn't take it off the yeast, but I just pitched it right on top.
Okay.
But it was after the airlock stopped bubbling. It was probably 10 days after I pitched the yeast.
So in theory, or at least according to your research, and I hear different things about mash hopping and first wort hopping as far as the bitterness are concerned. But you're thinking that did you actually use any formulas, IBU calculation formulas?
I used Tinsys, the IBU formula there on hopville.com.
Mm-hmm.
So I punched it in, it was 0, and I sort of was suspect, but I'm like, well, I'll go with it, and what I heard and read, that's what I thought. I would get no IBUs out of that.
Okay. Beer B, same grain bill, same amounts of hops, but you just moved them around to different places. How'd you do that?
Yeah, all these went into the boil. I did a half ounce. All these are Cascade. Half ounce at 15, quarter ounce at 5 minutes, and a quarter ounce at 1 minute.
Okay. So kind of a hop bursting approach there. Kind of the same approach that I do with my 15-minute extract ales that I like to do. Mm-hmm. And then beer C?
Beer C was equal amounts of beer B and beer A.
Okay. So who did you get to help you out evaluating this?
Sure. I used a couple of friends, Derek and Ryan Galligan, and also my homebrew club, the Monks, the Monadnock Original Nurturing Krausen Squad. It's a heck of a name, but it works out pretty well.
It's one of my favorite things about homebrew clubs is the names and how they wind up spelling these things.
It's great.
So what was the did you tell them, first of all, what they were tasting, or did you just hit them blind?
I hit them blind. Yeah, I said, here's 3 beers, and I handed out sheets, with tell me what had the most IBUs. Tell me what you think each beer, how many IBUs was in each beer. Tell me what beer you like best, and tell me what beer you like least.
Okay.
But I didn't tell them anything about the experiment until after.
All right. So what did you find out?
Well, here is what I found out. On beer A, which I thought had 0 IBUs, which I still sort of think, but maybe not. Most people thought beer A had the most IBUs in it. Beer B, out of the 10 participants, nobody thought had the most IBUs. And beer C, which was the blend, about 40% thought that had the most IBUs.
Interesting.
Beer B, nobody liked the best. Beer A, 60% of the people liked the best, and beer C, it was about 40%.
So the average guess for the IBUs, you averaged those. You asked people to guess what the IBUs were in the beers, and you averaged those out. What did you find out?
Yeah, sure. The average in beer A, which I thought had no IBUs, people guessed 22 IBUs. Beer B was 15, and beer C, which again was the blend, people thought had the most at 27 IBUs.
Interesting.
That's what I thought.
Perception is reality, right?
Yeah, I suppose so.
So what are your conclusions?
Well, unless you tell me differently, which I have a inclination that you might, I don't really know. I don't know why people thought beer A had the most IBUs, because I thought there wasn't. I don't know why beer A people liked the most, because I thought it was just going to be this sweet tea, unbalanced thing, just nasty, but turns out I was wrong.
So what were they? So how would you describe the character of each of those beers? I mean, you asked people which they liked the best and which they thought was the worst, but what were the differences in the sensory between those three? What did you get?
To me, I actually got hops in the aroma. I thought all the beers had some hops in there, and when I tasted them, I thought it was pretty darn similar. I did it twice. At first, I thought beer A I honestly thought it was disgusting. But 2 weeks later, I brought it to the Homebrew Club, and we tried it again, and people are thinking, hey, beer A is not that bad. And I tried it again. I'm like, oh, yeah, it's actually not that bad. So I think hops came out, at least in the nose, in all three beers, and I actually thought, on the palate, they were pretty similar.
So why was A disgusting at first?
It actually was, like I said, it was like just a sweet tea, and I had it warm, and I don't know. Me and my buddy I was bottling it with that day just had. We both said it was the worst beer I've ever made. And at that time, I thought it was, but you go back, you have it chilled a little bit, and it wasn't that bad.
Could it be that it might have been flat, or was it flat the first time you tasted it, or?
Yeah, it could have been that. It was flat. I bottle conditioned, so it definitely could be that reason.
Yeah, I mean, I've found that, not trying to put suggestions in your head, but I've found that a lot of times when a beer is young and flat, it's a bit sweet, but then once it gets a carbonation, the carbonic acid or whatever it is in there adds a bit of bitterness and a bit of sharpness to the beer and helps balance it out a bit.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Which is another reason not to panic at any stage in the brewing process. If the beer's not done yet, I get email all the time from people who say, I've ruined my beer. What did I do wrong? And I say, well, just wait.
Yep.
Hang in there.
Yep.
So do you want to hear what Brad said?
I would love to. Yes, I'm very interested. I think I'm going to be shocked, actually.
Okay. Now, Brad, I don't have him on the phone, but I've got his sensory here, or his sensory, but his lab analysis here. Brad Sturgeon from Monmouth College has once again volunteered his time and equipment in the interest of science here.
Thank you, Brad.
And he had a cold. He was coming off of a cold, so he said his sensory was off, but his numbers should be good. What he did, you sent him 3 bottles labeled A, B, and C. How confident are you that you labeled those correctly? Just asking.
Well, we'll say a little over 50. How about that? That's better odds than half. I figured I was going to get blown away here.
Okay. So he did the IBU assay. That's the ASBC Beer 23A. Each measurement, he did an average of 2 samples. So he analyzed 6 samples total, and then 2 samples each, and then he averaged the 2, and then figured out an error rate or whatever, a plus and minus on each one. Are you ready?
I am ready. Let's do it.
He said beer A. Oh, and by the way, you said you predicted on the first one 0 IBUs according to the formula you used. Beer B, you predicted 30.2.
Yep.
And then because you averaged the two together, you predicted 15.1.
Yes.
On the C.
Yep.
Okay, so here we go.
There's no science behind that. It was just a blend.
So and the result, and we'll be right back with just trying to prolong the suspense. Beer A, 21.4.
Wow.
With an error rate of plus or minus 0.2. So, add either within a range of 0.2 of 21.4.
Okay.
Beer B, 20.8.
Wow. Holy smokes.
With an error of plus or minus 0.1.
That's incredible.
Now here's the odd part. And keep in mind that Brad averaged he took 2 samples of each bottle and then, measured them each and then averaged them. C, you remember A was 21.4, B 20.8, C 17.8.
17.8. Huh. You would think it'd be 21 or so.
Yeah, you'd think it'd be between 20 and 21. Yeah, you'd think it would be around 21 if it was if it was a blend between those first 2 beers.
Yep. So I guess here's my conclusion between that. Maybe beer B had a little bit more. Maybe it was 60-40 beer B to drop that, but why would it be lower?
Yeah, it shouldn't be if you're averaging those 2 numbers. Yeah. If I remember my junior high math, you should be between those 2.
Well, I'm very, very confident beer C was the blend. Wow, that's really interesting. Beer A and beer B, I was like, oh boy, I really hope I didn't mix those up. But beer C, I absolutely am over 100% sure, which isn't possible. I knew was the blend. Huh.
Which, and the...
what do we do here?
Well, I mean, well, first of all, Brad, good Lord. I had some, I was telling oh my goodness. I was telling Kevin before we started that I had coffee just a couple hours ago, and I don't usually drink coffee afternoon, and so I'm a little scatterbrained, but I was holding it together until then. Brad did a taste test, and even though his sensory was off, he predicted B would be greater than or equal to C, just from his sensory. Yeah. And then he thought both of them would be greater than A. He thought that B would have an IBU level of 25, around 25. C would be around 20, and then A would be around 10. How weird is that? I mean, that's just from his sensory. That's just no machines involved there, other than his his recovering from a cold nose and tongue there.
Yeah, that's really interesting. How in the world did that happen? I mean, I bought them all on the same day, so
age is not an issue.
No, that's what I was thinking, but it couldn't be age because I bottled beer A at one point, beer B probably 15 minutes later just because it was a small batch, and then I blended beer A and beer B together right after that, a half hour after that, so I don't understand.
Well, as often happens with the scientific experiments, you try to you maybe answer one question and you ask 3 more.
Yeah, this is great. It really just intrigues me. It makes me want to do more experiments. Well,
Brad has stepped up to the plate, and he said that he's willing to do another test.
I think that'd be great.
So we can coordinate, offline how we do that. We should probably just try to replicate this one again. And I could do it down down here too, and send him the results as well, so that we can kind of have duplication there.
Yeah, I think that'd be fun.
But part of science is duplication of results.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
let's do this thing again.
But there's one thing that's for sure, is that there was no beer that had 0 IBUs.
Yes. So beer A, which I thought was going to have no IBUs, has the most. Is that correct?
Yeah, 20 according to this, 20 with an error range of 0.2 plus or minus 0.2, 21.4 IBUs. B, 20.8 plus or minus 0.1. And then, well, he said C 17.8 with an error range of 0.6 plus or minus 0.6. Yeah. That still doesn't get us up to
not even 20.
Up to 20. But anyway, that's when you said when you first sent the description of the experiment, and you said that these beers didn't had no actual IBUs. That's what caught my attention the most. That's why I got Brad involved, is because, well, if you listen to the podcast that I get on my soapbox about the IBU formulas and how they
how many there are,
and how if you feed the same numbers into each one, you get different results. So maybe this is just another step in kind of clarifying that and figuring out something
absolutely
new.
I was also thinking, this morning, what if James comes at me and says beer A has the most IBUs and just, knocks my socks off, and which in turn, that's what actually happened. So I was trying to think, well, let's think about it. I did sparge with 170-degree water. I brought the grain bed up, not the grain bed, but the mash up to 170, maybe 175. So some isomerization did happen there. Did the oils from that cross over into the boil kettle and boil for that amount of time? And that's why we get those IBUs?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because you've got to, Brad and I were talking, you've got to think that even if the beer is sitting at mash temperature at, say 150 degrees Fahrenheit, which would be, 65 C, around there somewhere, those alpha acids are going to dissolve into the wort.
Right.
And I don't know what else happens to them chemically at that time, but then, those alpha acids are going to be carried over into the boil kettle. Otherwise, why would you even why would people even be doing mash hopping or first wort hopping? So those alpha acids are going to be in the solution. And then unless they are chemically broken somehow, they're going to be isomerized. They're going to be, the definition I think the definition of isomerization is chemically changing those hops. So,
right.
Yeah.
And I thought it had to be around 170, maybe 175 to 212 for isomerization to happen. And that did happen when I batch sparged. Maybe not so much in the mash, but definitely in the batch sparge, I brought that temperature right up to 170 plus. So, I guess isomerization was actually happening there, and I'm guessing some of those oils, like you said, crossed over.
Mm-hmm. It makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so you're willing to do the experiment again?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
And I will
just give me an excuse to brew.
And I will jump in there as well. And if you will send, or I guess we could just use this same recipe.
Yeah, sure.
And then we'll just do it again, and we'll send our stuff to Brad, and we'll see what we come up with number wise again.
That'd be great. Love to do that.
And I'd be interested to get feedback from those in the listening audience on if they've used mash hopping themselves, what their perceptions are, so that we can kind of feed that into the data pot as well. But I'm looking forward to it. I'm glad you did this. I'm glad, part of me wanted to have a definite answer, but part of me thinks that asking more questions is more fun because we get to play some more.
Yeah, it'd sort of be a letdown if something didn't come up. Like, oh, yeah, well, I guess we thought that was going to happen. Oh, that's too bad. Now we can't brew anymore. Let's give us some more excuses to brew here.
Excellent. Well, Kevin, I appreciate your sending the beers to Brad. I appreciate your bringing the experiment up, and I look forward to the next step.
Oh, of course. Thank you for having me on, James.
Thanks again to Kevin and to Brad, and I look forward to the next round. We'll just see where this takes us. It should be fun. There's just more evidence that we need to take a fresh look at these IBU calculators and formulas. It's more about probably how the beer tastes in the end of it. If you try a recipe, document your recipes well in a logbook, and then go back to that recipe, take a look at the alpha acids and the hops that you're using when you're putting them in, then taste for yourself what you like. And, that may be a better indicator on some aspects than what these calculated IBUs are telling you. All right, stepping off the soapbox now. If you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to james@basicbrewing.com, or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com, and please don't forget to tell us where you're from. Our new Basic Brewing growler bags are available on our shop. Protect your precious homebrew and craft beers as you take it from place to place as the weather warms up this season. Check out our new support link, or not so new support link, where you can throw a couple of bucks into the tip jar by subscribing financially to our podcasts. We greatly appreciate everybody who's done that. Be sure to check out our DVDs, Extract Brewing, Partial Mashing, Stepping into All Grain, Low-Tech Lagering and Decoction Mashing, and Introduction to Wine Kits. You can find them all on our site. We've got combo deals to save you a few bucks if you want to buy more than one DVD at a time, and you can check out our Basic Brewing shirts in the store too. Our brewers' logbooks are there as well. Keep track of up to 50 batches of beer. You can see a listing of the fine folks across the country who sell our DVDs on basicbrewing.com. And if there isn't a vendor in your area, you can order them online in our online shop at basicbrewingshop.com. Thanks to everybody who's continued to click on our Amazon.com link. We appreciate the support there. Our featured products this week that were purchased through the link are The Drunken Botanist and Schwinn 220 Recumbent Exercise Bike 2012 model. Thanks again, everybody. Remember, I can't tell who bought what, so no worries there. Just click on the Amazon.com logo on our site the next time you feel like Amazon shopping, and we greatly appreciate your support. And don't forget, you can also join the American Homebrewers Association and subscribe to Brew Your Own magazine through the associate links on basicbrewing.com. That's all until next time. Until then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by our buddy Kelly Dodson. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. So long.